talk about a global health crisis that's been with humanity for thousands of years, a disease that has literally shaped history. But somehow, most of the world has never even heard of it. So let's dive into the story of schistosomiasis. So how big of a problem are we talking about? Well, this number is just staggering. Up to 600 million people, mostly in developing countries, are at risk. And to give you some perspective on that, more than 9 out of every 10 cases are in Africa. This is a massive, continent-wide challenge. This is a disease of poverty. It thrives in the background, quietly influencing the rise and fall of civilizations without ever really making headlines. So why is it so invisible, and what exactly is this ancient enemy? To really understand schistosomiasis, you have to look back. I mean, way back. This is not some new illness. Its fingerprints are all over ancient history. And what's so wild is the sheer historical scale we're talking about here. There's evidence that this disease might be linked to why the ancient city of Jericho was abandoned. Then, thousands of years later, it absolutely crippled Napoleon's army when he was campaigning in Egypt. It's been this hidden player throughout human history. So what's causing all this chaos? Well, the culprit is a parasitic flatworm called a schistosome. And if you want to beat it, you first have to understand its incredibly clever and kind of vicious life cycle. Okay, I know this diagram looks a little complicated, but stick with me. It's actually a fascinating, if not terrifying, process. It all kicks off with infected humans, right? Their waste releases these parasite eggs into the water. Those eggs then hatch and have to find a very specific type of freshwater snail. That snail becomes a host, the parasite multiplies like crazy inside, and then thousands of tiny larvae get released back into the water. And when another person comes into contact with that water, boom, the larvae burrow into their skin and the whole cycle starts over. It needs both people and snails to survive. So let's just walk through that journey again. Step 1, eggs from human waste get into fresh water. Step 2, those eggs infect snails, which basically turn into little parasite factories. Step 3, the snails unleash thousands of these microscopic larvae, they're called cercaria, back into the water. And then step 4 and 5, people touch the water, the larvae burrow right through their skin, and then they start their journey inside the body to become adult worms. And this really shows you the enemy up close. On the left, that's a single egg, where the whole nightmare begins. And on the right, those are the free-swimming cercaria, the tiny, invisible invaders armed with spines that let them slice through human skin in just seconds. But as fascinating as the biology is, the real story here isn't the parasite, it's the people. This is a disease that doesn't just make you sick. It systematically robs people of their potential, especially the most vulnerable among us. And the effect it has on children is just heartbreaking. A chronic infection can cause anemia, malnutrition, and stunted growth. It can even lead to cognitive delays and make it hard for kids to do well in school. It basically traps whole generations in this horrible cycle of poverty and poor health. Now, the parasite isn't a one-trick pony. The disease shows up in 2 main ways, depending on the exact species of the worm. One type goes after the urinary system, and the other one attacks the intestines and liver. And they are both devastating. With the urinary form, what happens is the body tries to defend itself by building these hard walls of tissue around the parasite's eggs in the bladder. You can see the damage here. Over time, this can block the urinary tract, cause kidney failure, and it's a major cause of a really aggressive type of bladder cancer. Then you have the intestinal form. This one's main target is the liver and spleen. The parasite's eggs get lodged in the liver, and that causes massive inflammation and scarring. And over a long period, this damage leads to organs getting dangerously enlarged. It can cause internal bleeding, and it can absolutely be fatal. For decades, fighting this parasite was almost as dangerous as the disease itself. Seriously, the cure was awful. But then a medical revolution happened that completely changed the game. This timeline really shows you how dramatic the shift was. In the early 20th century, the treatments were just horrifying. We're talking multiple injections of toxic heavy metal compounds. I mean, they were literally poisons with brutal side effects. But then, in the 1990s, everything changed with a single pill, a drug called praziquantel, or PZQ for short. I mean, just look at this contrast. On the left, that's the chemical structure for an antimony poison. On the right, praziquantel. It's safe, it's incredibly effective, and it can be given in a single dose. This pill was the absolute turning point in the fight. So having a miracle drug is one thing, But getting it to hundreds of millions of people, that's a whole other challenge. And it required this massive global effort, a partnership of amazing organizations all committed to ending this neglected disease. And this partnership is a story in itself. You have the World Health Organization setting the strategy. You have crucial funding from groups like the Gates Foundation. The drug company Merck KOGA actually donates hundreds of millions of the pills for free. And then you have groups on the ground, like the Schistosomiasis Control Initiative, working with local governments to make sure those pills get to the people who need them most. Their main strategy is something called mass drug administration, or MDA, and it's pretty brilliant. Instead of the slow, expensive process of testing and treating people one by one, they just treat everyone in a high-risk area, often kids through their schools. It's a super efficient way to bring down the amount of disease in a whole community. But there's a catch with the school-based model. It misses the really little kids, the preschoolers, who we now know are also at high risk. This has created what people call a treatment gap, and it's a huge focus of the work right now, with new kid-friendly versions of PZQ being developed. So we've made incredible progress in controlling the disease and reducing all that suffering. But the ultimate goal, right, eliminating it completely, well, that brings on a whole new set of challenges. This is the final battle. And it's a tough one. The biggest hurdle is that praziquantel is a cure. It's not a vaccine. People can get treated, feel better, and then get reinfected the very next day if they go back into contaminated water. There's also the constant worry about drug resistance down the line. And maybe the trickiest part of all, efforts to control the snail populations in Africa just haven't been very successful on a large scale. And it's really important to understand the difference in these two goals. Elimination means you stop transmission in a specific country or region, but you still have to keep your guard up. Eradication, that's the ultimate prize. That means the disease is gone, permanently, worldwide, forever. To date, in all of human history, we have only ever eradicated one human disease, smallpox. Guinea worm is right on the verge of being number 2. So the question is, with a life cycle this complex and the constant threat of getting sick again, can this ancient, hidden plague finally be brought into the light and defeated for good?